Alrighty, guys. It's a kernel level tweak. It's a registry entry, and essentially what it means is that when you select any one of these cores, what you're basically telling Windows is don't schedule anything on those cores, or at least try to schedule almost nothing on those cores. And so I only wanted it to schedule stuff on my other CCD, my regular CCD chip, not my 3D chip. Because when I played games, for example, I would notice there would be way too much activity on Core 0. And so it was kind of like having 7 X3D cores, because essentially one of them would be flooded with a whole bunch of stuff that, I couldn't control. I couldn't have any influence over. And so shout out to the person known as Amit XV. He's been super helpful in making these videos happen. He's been showing me how to use this different software. He's been giving me a lot of different useful info and feedback. And so you guys should definitely go and check him out. I'll leave his information in the description of this video, because he also has a whole bunch of other useful tools and software that you guys should also check out as well. So I highly recommend it. And so with that being in mind, I guess the best way to demonstrate how this actually works with Media Experience Analyzer is what you want to do is go into Windows essentially and go down and develop or download the Windows ADK or Development Toolkit. And then once you get that downloaded, you're going to see an option for what's called the Media Experience Analyzer and Performance Recorder. And so the way you get this started is you just want to click start, and that will start recording. And don't do this for longer than 5 to 10 seconds, because it uses an absolute ton of RAM, like a ton of it. And so it can immediately choke up your system if you record it for too long. But once you do that, then you're going to want to go and click the save button on there. And what you're going to do is you're going to get essentially a trace file, or essentially a path that's going to be labeled right here, but inside of the actual performance recorder. You're going to want to copy that and then go into the Media Experience Analyzer. And what you're going to want to do is, actually you can just see it right here, is you're going to want to type in XA-I with parentheses and then copy and paste that trace path into there. So obviously this is using the same one, 103933. So that's how you do it. And if before that, if you haven't done this, you'll want to do this as well. So set symbol path .cmd and then hit enter on that as well, and that should be all that you need to do to get this up and running and have the same tools available for you as well, so you can test it for yourself. So with that being said, here is essentially an example of what I'm talking about with those certain processes that were completely protected but now no longer are untouchable essentially. So CSRSS was a huge one. And as you can see, CSRSS is completely moved off of Core 0. There are no actual activity running on Core 0, which is going to be down here. So CSRSS was a huge one. And then if we also go down, we also can see system, or essentially the kernel. As you can see as well, almost no activity is happening on Core 0. All of it's happening on the other CCD, which is what we're looking for, because that's how we're going to improve the stuttering and the hitching with the actual scheduling of the operating system when it came to using the E cores and the P cores. So we have that available, WinInit, WinLogon, all of them. It's basically every single software and service is going to be running on this actual correct scheduling path that I've selected for this different operating system. So yeah, guys, that's basically the video. That's all I wanted to kind of share. Um, it's a really cool tweak because for me, I've wanted to kind of figure out how I could move all of Windows off of Core 0 for the longest time, because it's something that has been kind of important for me with the chip that I have. So the 7950X3D with its V-cache die and non-V-cache die. And so the only thing that is scheduled on Core 0 is just timers. So if I go to right here, that's it. That's the only stuff that's scheduled. And these timers are only one or two every so often, because as you can see, this is not consistent like at all. So this isn't like constantly polling like how you would see with a bunch of other stuff. So if I just unselect all of these, you'll just kind of get an idea as to the fact that it's only timers basically that are being scheduled. So yeah. And then if I go into the kernel right here, so the actual kernel driver, as you can see, there's almost basically no activity, and even the activity that is, it's basically only one or two small little tiny actual, processes happening in the background. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the content. I do plan on publishing a few more videos in the upcoming future that are going to be a little bit more in depth with some input lag and some DPC latency, especially. Yes, well, welcome to the video. So today what I wanted to do is a follow-up video on the Ultimate Windows Scheduler Guide. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is that there was one specific tweak that you can do to your system to dramatically reduce the amount of interrupts and latency within your system. And the reason why this matters so much, guys, is because in combination with the tweaks that I've already mentioned before with the reserved CPU sets, what I noticed is that when I ran Media Experience Analyzer, there was only one specific driver and one specific kernel symbol that was not obeying the reserved CPU sets, which if you're not familiar with, allows you to basically change the way that Windows scheduling works entirely. So you can basically move all of your operating system off of Core 0, which again, I originally thought was basically all but impossible because I had never seen anybody end latency within your system. And the reason why this matters so much, guys, is because in combination with the tweaks that I've already mentioned before with the reserved CPU sets, what I noticed is that when I ran Media Experience Analyzer, there was only one specific driver and one specific kernel sim reserved CPU. This matters so much, guys, is because in combination with the tweaks that I've already mentioned before with the reserved CPU sets, what I noticed is that when I ran Media Experience Analyzer, there was only one specific driver and one specific kernel symbol that was not obeying the reserved CPU sets, which, if you're not familiar with, allows you to basically change the way that Windows scheduling works entirely. So you can basically move all of your operating system off of Core 0, which again, I originally thought was basically all but impossible because I had never seen anybody have any software that could override it in a way that actually worked at a fundamental level with even the kernel drivers. So you guys are gonna check that out because it's gonna be a really cool guide that you're gonna probably enjoy learning about. But onwards with this video, the one symbol is known as PPM Perf Action. And what this seems to stand for is Processor Performance Management Perf Action. So performing an action for power management. And so what I noticed is that a lot of people online were saying that this was related to, for example, something like speed step, speed shift, all sorts of different dynamic changing of frequency sort of tools that help save power, boost performance, all that fun stuff. So what I did is I downloaded a software known as the Power Settings Explorer, and this is normally not something that you can have available already. So I'll link it in the GitHub description as well, and you guys can actually figure it out and download it for yourself. But if you go into there, there's one specific setting, Processor Performance Time Check Interval. Well, normally this is defaulted on the high performance plan, and it's normally set to a value of 15 milliseconds, which is a very high amount considering how often this is going to be actually updating. So what this specifically says is specify the amount that must expire before processor performance states and parked cores may be reevaluated in milliseconds. So this is essentially checking how often the operating system needs to change certain power saving states within the system. But as we all know, most of the way that reduces latency is by disabling power saving features. So this essentially is updating for no reason. And this seems to also apply for all of the different games and actual latency tests that I ran. It doesn't seem to do anything so long as you don't actually need to have any sort of parked cores moved or changed or power states actually reevaluated. So if you set this to the highest value of 5,000, you can dramatically reduce the amount of interrupts on the system by an absolutely unbelievable amount. So I ran a bunch of different DPC and ISR analyzing tools and software. And so the one you guys are going to check out is what's known as XPerf. And it's basically a much better, an almost infinitely better version of LatencyMon because there's a lot of different flaws with that software. But XPerf gives you all of the same different things that you're going to want to use to actually analyze, the latency within your system. So normally, with this set to 15 milliseconds, it will be generating almost 113,000 interrupts on your system, which is an absolutely insane amount considering just how much of it is related to just the kernel alone of 100. Thousand interrupts are coming from just the kernel alone. So that's why I wanted to analyze the driver of the kernel specifically to see if I could find a way to reduce this, even if by a smaller amount. Well, this was the main reason why I wanted to make this video because this is how unbelievable this tweak is. When you set it to the highest value of 5,000 milliseconds, you reduce the amount of interrupts on your system by 10 times. So we have cut the amount of interrupts into 1/10. And not only that, but the latency is dramatically reduced across the board, regardless of whatever driver or service that you're talking about. So if I go into the 15 for flushing, that's another example of one. And so, for example, down here on the NVMe